Hi there, you're listening to the Estranged Heart podcast, and I'm your host, Kreed Revere. Welcome back to our returning listeners, and if this is your first time here, thank you for selecting this podcast to listen to. As we begin today's episode, I invite you to grab a cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and listen with an open heart. But first, the regular disclaimer. I am not a licensed therapist or counselor. Nothing within this podcast should be considered or taken as therapy. If you are in need of therapeutic support such as counseling, please seek out a therapist near you. So as we begin a new episode today, I wanted to take a moment to express my gratitude and appreciation and love for everyone who has listened to this podcast and helps support the work that I do with estranged moms and estranged adult children. Valentine's Day is coming up this week, and I just wanted to say I love each of you. Thank you for listening to the podcast, sharing it with others, and letting me know when it is helpful for you. And for those who don't necessarily think that it's super helpful for them, thank you for letting me know your opinion as well. You're speaking up and letting your voice be heard. And that's all a part of the process of life, right? So I'm grateful for each of you. Today's episode is titled, I'm Estranged. There's nothing to be grateful for. Is there? And before we dive in today, a couple of announcements. I have recently been meeting with several estranged adult children, and it's becoming more and more apparent to me just how unseen and unheard they feel. So as I continue to work with these human beings, I hope to be able to share some of their stories, but they too are like estranged parents in that they're hesitant to come on to the podcast. They're hesitant to share their story for fear of backlash and all the things, right? And when I talk with them, I tell them, the parents think the exact same thing. So again, there's that two sides of the same coin. So I will share as I can without, again, breaking confidentiality or anything along those lines, but passing along information that could be insightful for estranged parents. And hopefully we can all learn together on how to heal these broken relationships. So be watching for some of that to come in the future. There will be several announcements forthcoming over the next probably 2 months regarding um, the estranged heart and the work that I do with parents. So be watching for that. I don't mean to be so um, vague about that right now, but things are in the works, and until they are and have been finalized, I am not at liberty to discuss those things. So anyway, be watching and listening for those announcements. Okay, on to today's episode. Um, this episode was requested again by an estranged mom in my online Facebook support group. And it was in part, she asked that I perhaps talk about this on the podcast as a way to help parents to find a way out of the misery, out of the pain on a level where it's just coloring every aspect of their world. And again, I'm super familiar with that, right? But she was really wanting to help specifically moms in this group, to refocus, to change their focus just just a quarter turn, to be able to begin focusing on something else, even if for just a moment in time. So, today's episode is on gratitude. And I know that when you are in the middle of estrangement, whether you are a parent or an estranged adult child, thinking about what to be grateful for in the midst of your pain and your sorrow, your grief, and all of those things seems either absolutely impossible or a mountain so high that the very thought of climbing it is just too much. And I'd like to offer a bit of a different perspective on this. Part of this will be some just, facts, some scientific studies and information that's been found on gratitude. But other parts of it will be about my own personal journey with gratitude. And I'm hoping that you'll listen, as I mention on this podcast all the time, with an open heart, a little bit of curiosity. Maybe there's something in this podcast that in this episode, that take away that I can plant as a seed and watch it germinate and grow. Um, I don't know. Maybe you want to take it and run with it. All I'm asking is that you listen with an open heart and get curious about either what is my resistance to gratitude, or how can I make my gratitude practice bigger, larger, more important to me? Those kinds of things. So we'll begin with our quotes as normal. And I have four quotes here today. I know the author of one of them. The other three I do not. So if you know the author of these quotes, please let me know, and I'm happy to give them credit. The first is, "You can be filled with grief and gratitude at the same time." The second, "Resilience can be strengthened by expressing gratitude." The third, "Gratitude is an antidote to negative emotions, a neutralizer of envy, hostility, worry, and irritation. It is savoring. It is not taking things for granted. It is present oriented." And the fourth and final one, "Living in a state of gratitude is the gateway to grace." And that is by Ariana Huffington. So the backstory on gratitude, my story on gratitude, comes about back in 2009, the very beginning of 2010. And let me just preface this by saying, prior to this, I did not have gratitude practice at all. As a matter of fact, I was what most people would probably define. I was the definition of the term negative Nelly. I worked in a career where I saw negativity all day long, all day, every day. And I took that home with me, and it colored my world and every aspect of my world. So when my life fell apart in 2009, and my BFF told me I should start a gratitude practice, I looked her straight in the face and told her to go to hell. I was like, "I've lost the partner. I've lost the job. I'm getting ready to lose the house. I have zero to be grateful for." So she kept on me, and she said she would call me every day. "I want you to write down some things that you're grateful for tonight." And I would argue with her, and she argued back, and I would tell her I didn't have anything to be grateful for. that there was all this pain in my life and everybody was walking away and I was losing everything. And there was absolutely nothing for me to be thankful and grateful for. And she said, she kept on. She kept on and she kept on and she kept on. Every day, you need to write down 10 things you're grateful for. And every day I would tell her, leave me the hell alone. There's nothing for me to be grateful for. Until one day when I had just had enough of her and yammering on and on and on about this gratitude list. I was just like, fine, if it will get you to shut up, I'll write a gratitude list tonight. And she said, I'm going to check in with you in the morning to make sure. So that night, I went to bed and I sat with a pen and paper in hand for what seemed like eternity because I could not think of anything to be grateful for. Now, mind you, in the middle of all of this, I still had a roof over my head. I had my daughters in my life. I had a grandchild and another grandchild on the way in my life. I had food on my table. I had I had things in my life, but I was so hyper focused on what I did not have that I wasn't seeing the things that I did have. So that first night on my gratitude list, I could only think of three things. So I wrote those three things down. The first one was my bed. The second one were my pillows. And the third thing were my daughters. That's all I could think of to be grateful for. That was it. Three things: my bed, my pillow, and my kids. So she called me the next day. She said, so what are your 10 things? I said, I only have three. She said, what are your three things? And I told her, and she said, okay, tonight I want you to write 10 things. And then this kind of thing just repeated itself until I was able to get up to 10 things. And this process to get up to being able to list 10 things took months for me because I was in such a state of anger and pain and frustration and hyper focused on the loss and the grief that I just couldn't see it. So that started what turned into a 6-year, 365 days a year gratitude practice. For 6 years, every single day of the year. Yes, on Christmas. Yes, on Thanksgiving. Yes, on my birthday. Yes, on, April 14th. Yes, every day I wrote a gratitude list. And eventually I took that gratitude list and I started posting it on my personal Facebook page and I called it my good list. And after a while, if I didn't post on a particular day, I would always write my list, but whether or not I posted it on Facebook at times didn't happen. And so if I did not post it, I would have friends coming to me asking me, where's your good list? Where's your good list? I miss your good list. And I started to think, wow, this is really having an impact on other people, not just myself. And what I noticed with myself was I started going throughout my day actively looking for things to put on my good list because I knew I would be posting it on Facebook and I knew others would be interested in those things. I did not put things on my good list that I thought other people might want to hear about. I put things on that good list that I was actually grateful for, that impacted my life, that I wondered about, that I was curious about, things like that. That's what went on my list, and that's what people would miss when I wouldn't post it. So again, that turned into a 6-year practice, and then it kind of fell off in the beginning of my, or when my estrangement occurred, right? Again, got back into that place of there's nothing to be grateful for, you know, stuck in my misery, things like that. And I one just one evening, I happened to see one of my journals lying next to my chair, and I thought I haven't done my gratitude list in forever. And so I took it out and I started it again. And that has now turned into what is now called my randomness list. And I post that on Facebook, on my personal Facebook page every day. Well, not every day, but on most days. And again, people reach out to me when I haven't posted something and they're like, "Are you okay? What's going on? I love your list, your randomness lists. These are so inspirational. Please keep sharing them." Things like that. And it keeps me, more importantly, for me, it keeps me focused on what I want to focus on in my life. And I want to focus on and be grateful for the good things in my life. And what I feel is good in my life may not be what you feel is good in your life, right? It's all individualized, and that can shift and change over time. As I said, it started off as a quote unquote gratitude list that I then titled as my good list, and now it's my randomness list. And it just includes a whole bunch of just random thoughts and things I'm appreciative of and things like that. So throughout my day, instead of this steady focus on the negative and the things I don't have, throughout my day I am thinking about things that I can put on this randomness list that I am grateful for. So it helped me to turn, not it wasn't that I was never sad or that I didn't have grief and I didn't have worry and all of those things. I still did. It just lessened those, or took it from a bonfire flame to just, a steady fire in the fireplace kind of thing, right? So that it wasn't overtaking my life. And slowly but surely and with time, things began to shift where there was less misery and grief and things like that to focus on, and much more um, good things to focus on. So, in preparing for today's episode, I doing research on gratitude, and I think it's important to list some of they've done scientific studies on gratitude. Brene Brown talks about gratitude a lot. I mean, so do many others. But here are some of the things, and these are things that I found to be true with me as well, that scientific studies are about, and the result of a, having a gratitude practice. There's people who have gratitude practices generally have greater happiness. They have more optimism, and I definitely found that with me. I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop, and the world was coming to an end kind of person. And then as my gratitude practice increased and became a steady thing, that decreased significantly, and what increased significantly was optimism. Um, you I had new and lasting relationships. I had better health. I felt better internally. I found myself smiling more. Now, that's not a scientific study. It's not a result from the scientific study, but that was what happened to me. I found that I smiled more. I laughed easier and more often. Back to the scientific studies. Uh, More progress towards personal goals. That was true for me as well. Fewer aches and pains. That was absolutely true for me. More alertness and determination. Increased generosity and empathy. That was an absolute for me. Absolutely. I wanted to give more. I wanted to be empathetic more when I started this gratitude practice. And also, the studies reveal better sleep and improved self esteem. and both of those were applicable in my case as well. So, what stops people from practicing gratitude? What are some of the obstacles to that? Because there are. And as I mentioned earlier, I had this career that was hyper focused on all the wrongs in the world, and so it just didn't wasn't something that came naturally for me. So some of the challenges and obstacles to folks practicing gratitude is it, it's it's challenging and at times difficult to acknowledge what we have. And you may ask yourself, as I did, why would it be difficult to acknowledge what we actually have? Well, number one, we stop paying attention to it. We just simply stop paying attention. We take things for granted, and we're living in the past or we're living in the future, but we're not here in the present. Um, and so that we things just go by, just like day after day after day. Things, life is happening, and one day you wake up and you're like, what has happened? 20 years has gone by. So again, not being in the present moment and taking things for granted, not paying attention. It also places us in a position of vulnerability. When we find gratitude, that vulnerability comes in because then we begin to fear losing what we have gained, right? And so that happens, and or we're, as I said earlier, we're waiting for the other shoe to drop. So these can be things that can stop us from having a gratitude practice. And also, it reminds us of things we didn't have, right? Um, or things that were in our past that we no longer have in our present moment. And so we can, as estranged parents, we can be grateful for all the silly moments we had with our kids, and then we remember, oh, we don't have our kids in our life. And so it's hard to go back to those moments of thinking about our children and the moments of gratitude for that. Um, and for the estranged adult kids, I find that they are super grateful for their children in their life and the relationships that they have with their kids. And then they remember that they didn't have that with their parents. And so it's a sorrow. And so it's hard to focus on the good stuff when you remember the things that you didn't have or things that that were lacking in your life. And also it can bring up feelings of guilt, for having something that others do not. So for instance, in the case of estrangement and reconciliation, a reconciled mom may have trouble having a gratitude practice, especially if she is for instance, in a support group with other moms who have not yet reconciled, and they're, you know, not wanting to make that mom feel bad or worse, type of thing. And so there can be a feeling of guilt that comes with that keeps us from actually having that gratitude practice. So, how do we have a gratitude practice? If we want to, we decide this is not cool. I need to be present in my life and I need to be finding things to be grateful for, even in the midst of my estrangement. How do we do that? Where do we begin? What do we start with? Here are some of my thoughts. I think first and foremost, we have to get curious because, again, I just asked those questions, right? How can I have a gratitude practice? Where do I start? Those are curious questions. That's curiosity. And if you do not have curiosity around that, you're not going to be asking questions like that. How can I start a gratitude practice? Why would I want to start a gratitude practice? Those kinds of things. So we must get curious, and also, you know, in the middle of your life trying to ask these questions, what can I learn from this? How can this benefit me? And is there a shred of good in this for me? Again, getting curious instead of judging it, instead of saying, what can I learn from this? Oh, well, what I can learn from this is that you don't trust anybody and you keep your heart guarded and, instead of going down that road, because that's judgment, right? And making decisions based on a perceived notion. And then instead of leaving it open ended by being curious about it, we've already shut it down before it started. So curiosity means you got to leave the door open. Okay. The door open to being curious, to wonder, that kind of thing. Challenge your inner critic. And one of the questions that I ask myself when I start down that road, because I still have those moments of why am I doing this? Why should I do this? How is this is not going to serve me? The next question, I stop myself in the moment when I recognize what I am doing. And I say to myself, is that really true? Oh, I'm not going to do this because they hate me. Is that really true? Do I know that to be a fact? That's another question to ask. Again, getting curious. Journal. Even if it's bullet points, even if it's, you only list 3 things like I did when you start off, um, even if it's, writing it on a Post-it note, like write it down as you're going throughout your day. One of the things that I do is I use my voice recorder on my phone. And as I'm driving where I live, the mountains, snow-covered mountains and the mountain ranges are just stunning to me. And so there will be days that I'll be driving and it takes my breath away. And so I'll just grab my recorder and I'll say, man, this drive today, it's just stunning. It's such a clear day. And there is, Mount Baker in all her glory. What a magnificent piece of nature. And I'm grateful for that. And so that goes on my randomness list. Um, and I write it down. Like I have a notes thing on my phone that I keep my randomness list on. And so this is where I just jot stuff down throughout my days. And that, sometimes my list now is can be 15 to 20 things long. Some days it's 10, right? But the point is that I keep up with it and I keep moving with it. The next thing is think it's super helpful to find an accountability partner. So finding a friend, an acquaintance, if you're in a support group, finding someone within the support group that can be your accountability partner. Hey, we're going to practice gratitude for 30 days, or we're going to practice gratitude for 3 months, 6 months. And can you help hold me accountable for doing this? Right. And you do the same for them. And so every day you're like, okay, where's your list? Right. To make sure that then, and so even if it takes that you can't do it for yourself, doing it because you have to check in with someone and they're going to ask you about your gratitude list. So that's another thing that you can do. Another thing is awaken your sense of wonder. Remember what it was like when maybe you were 4 or 5 years old, or when your kids were 4 or 5 years old, or your grandkids are 4 or 5 years old. When you're that age, they're curious about everything, even toddlers, right? 1, 2, and 3 years old. I have a granddaughter that's almost 2, and she is just curious about everything. And she doesn't place judgment on it. She doesn't say, you know, I'm not going there because that looks scary over there. They just jump right in, right? Um, so develop the mind of a 4 or 5-year-old. Begin to look at the world through that lens instead of the lens of your 65-year-old self. And you'll be amazed at what you see. Another thing, and I do this myself, write thank you notes. Like physically write thank you notes to people. I know, when my youngest daughter was in high school, I remember her coming home one day from school just beaming from ear to ear, and I asked her what that huge smile was for, and she said, and she held up this piece of paper. It was a Post-it note, and it was something about how beautiful she was, "You're such a stunning person," or what have you. And I asked her, I said, "Well, who," and it wasn't signed by anyone. And I said, who wrote this? Where did this come from?" And she said, "It was on my car windshield when I came out of class at the end of day. And everybody had them. There was a Post-it note on everyone's car." And I thought, how amazing is that? Can you imagine going into Walmart to get something and coming out and there be this Post-it note on your windshield that says you're just a phenomenal human being? And you have no idea who it is, but how would that make you feel? You could do that for other people. I write thank you notes and I write, "Dear so and so, thank you for being in my life. Love Creed." And stick it in the mail or drop it off at someone's desk or what have you. But letting people know that they have meaning in your life, even if right now you're not able to do that with your children, right? You can do that with others. You could be passing in the hall and look at your spouse and say, "Hey, I love you," and just keep on walking. That's another piece of gratitude, right? You're grateful for this person to be in your life and you're letting them know that. Okay. Another one is giving compliments to strangers. I have practiced this, I have received this from others. And that always goes on my gratitude list, my randomness list. If someone, the other day, it wasn't not too long ago, I was in the store and some woman commented about my hair. And she said, "Your hair is just gorgeous." And at first it's a little uncomfortable because I'm like, ugh, and then because immediately the first thing I thought was, what does my hair look like? Today, how did I fix my hair? And I just looked at her and I said, "Thank you so much." And I just kept on walking. She kept on walking and we went on about our day. But that went on my randomness list. I was so grateful for that experience. Okay. Complete and total stranger. Don't have a clue who she was. And finally, give it time. This is not, if you have never had a gratitude practice, you don't know what to do with it. When you first start it, it's not going to feel comfortable. It's going to feel odd, and probably likely it's probably not likely to change your life in 3 days. It took mine, well, for me to really start to see the results of having a gratitude practice and how much it was changing my life, it took over a year. So this isn't something that you're going to start doing and just, expect it to change from day to night in, just a few days or a couple of months. It's going to take time. Hopefully yours doesn't take a year, but if it does, that's okay too, right? But give it time. Keep being consistent with it. Keep doing it, even on the days when you don't feel like doing it. Keep doing it. And eventually you will see things begin to shift. You'll look up one day and you'll be like, "Wow, I really have a different perspective on things now. Huh, wonder where that came from." And then all of a sudden you'll think, "Wonder if that has anything to do with that gratitude practice I'm doing." And I'm here to tell you it probably does. So, to recap, start small and be grateful, but not to the exclusion of all your other emotions. Remember, when I first started my gratitude list, I did it out of basically rebellion, right? I didn't stop crying and focused, on the positive, happy, happy, joy, joy. That's not what I did. And that is not what I am a fan of. My gratitude practice does not negate my emotions that might be considered quote unquote negative. All of my emotions and all of my gratitude are valid. Okay. So I do not practice gratitude to the exclusion of my other emotions. Do not do that. That's not what I'm asking you to do. Practice, practice, practice. You got to do it to begin to see something shift and change. If you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting what you've always gotten. Isn't that the definition of insanity? Right? So if you want something different, you must do something different. And share that with others. Share it with others so that you feel, in the beginning, you feel safe sharing with, right? But it also, there's a transformation that happens when you begin sharing it instead of not outwardly expressing it. There's a bigger shift, I think, that happens when we can share it with others. And that also helps spread the joy and the happiness, and others get to basically have a kind of a peek inside of our vulnerability and our hearts, and they begin to learn about us in a different way and can see us from a different perspective. And I think that's beautiful. I think that is just absolutely beautiful. So I'll leave you with these two things. The first one is write this on and put it on a sticky note on your bathroom mirror. Have you taken your daily dose of vitamin G today? Okay. And the second thing is, this is by Kirk Schneider, an author who wrote the book Awakening to Awe. Awe is the sense of amazement, humility, and wonder before the mystery of life. Awe is not just a cheap thrill or a stunned helplessness. It is an appreciation of the whole of life, the fragile as well as the exalting. Awe inspires us to see through the pettiness of life and connects us to the grand picture, the great adventure. And this adventure has remarkable potential to lift us, to heal us, and to give our lives meaning. Please find your gratitude. This brings this episode to a close. I hope that this time together was time you feel well spent and that you are able to find some takeaway nuggets to help you on your journey, wherever you may be on your estrangement and reconciliation path. If you feel you've received something helpful or positive from this podcast, please consider following us, sharing this podcast with others, leaving a positive review, perhaps entertaining becoming a guest on our show, or following us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok under the same name, The Estranged Heart. As a reminder, there is an online support group on Facebook. If you are a estranged mom who identifies as being spiritual and approaches estrangement with a sense of curiosity rather than blame and judgment, and desire to do inner self-work and reflection, please seek us out. We can be found at facebook.com/Estranged Mothers Support Group. And lastly, if you are an estranged parent or an estranged adult child and would like to have your story shared on the podcast, anonymously or not, please reach out to me via email at theestrangedheart@gmail.com.